Hey there, everybody. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing you to my father, Richard Lenard. If you haven't gotten a chance to know him already, he is a legend in the real estate business. He's been at it for over 35 years. His determination, drive, ability to connect with clients has been an inspiration not only to me, but to so many that you've had the, ability to change people's lives, whether it be through clients that you've had or other people in the industry that you've reached out to help. I'm so glad to have the opportunity, Dad, to take a few moments of your busy day and just talk about you and your journey in real estate.
Yeah, I'm
All
ready
right,
if you're ready.
I'm ready. So, question number one, Dad, how did you get into the real estate industry?
Well, as you know, I used to be an airline pilot, and before that, a school teacher, teaching science from middle school all the way up to college level. And I finished flying and decided I'm not going to work anymore. And that lasted for about 2 weeks. And I started getting very depressed. And I called up a friend of mine who was a realtor and a builder. And I said on a Sunday morning, Steve, I'm seriously considering your request for me to come and join your team and come into
Mm,
real estate. And he said, well, if you're seriously considering it, you'll seriously be in the business if you show up at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. He said, you got 2 ears and one mouth, so listen carefully to everything and you'll learn all the language and I think you're going to be great at it. I had no idea whether I would be great or not great. I had no idea whether I'd like it or not. I had no idea if I'd be really successful. I had no
So,
clue. Real estate.
so prior to real estate, I mean, you'd flown airplanes, you taught as a teacher. Um, you know, did you have experience prior to being in real estate, specifically in sales?
Well, when I was a young kid, for 2 years between graduating from high school and going into college, I ran a paint store for my dad in Elmont.
Hmm.
And I think his goal was that I would become, an owner of a store myself. But after 2 years, I realized my sights were much broader than that. So I just had to pursue a love that I had for many, many, many years, ever since I was a little kid, with planes.
Hmm.
And I decided I was getting close to the age where I wouldn't be eligible to go to pilot training or navigation training or anything like that. And so I said, it's either now or never. And then I found out that if I wanted to do it through the military, which was my goal, I had to become an officer. I was an airman, a mechanic, aircraft engine mechanic. And then I found out to get a commission to become an officer, to go to pilot training or navigation training, I had to have a college degree. So back I went to school and finished
So,
up 4 years.
so it wasn't necessarily like you got into this, and I think as the story goes, as you've told me, and as I lived it as a child, you were pretty successful right away, and it doesn't sound like you had a lot of sales experience before coming into real estate. What would you attribute your sort of instant success, if we can call it that, in real estate to?
I think I was just born with a very, very strong desire to succeed in whatever I wanted to do. I wanted to know about everything. And I had that same attitude about flying, because obviously if I had 300 people behind me and if I screwed up and flew into a mountain, they'd be a nanosecond behind me.
Hmm.
So I was always a very curious kind of a guy. I was very adventurous. As a little kid, I once took off because I figured it'd take a half hour to walk to my aunt and from Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, all the way to Fort Hamilton. Took me a whole day. I left in the morning, didn't tell anybody what I was doing. I'm just taking off. And I wound up at my aunt's house in the dark, knocking on the door. And of course, what are you doing here? And it was so late that she put me down in the front porch on a couch, and blanket and a pillow. And the next morning, my grandparents picked me up. I maybe was 7 years old when I did that.
So you would say,
I
it was
actually
like,
found the house.
so you actually, okay, you found the house. So
It was just drive.
Mhm.
It's just I've always been driven and very, very focused. And I had the ability to not be distracted from my goal. And when I started this whole aviation adventure, I had no idea if I'd be successful, but I knew I'd be a failure if I didn't try. And so I did every single step along the way, and I let nobody stand in my way. I had a terrible time dealing with the word no.
Did people ever tell you no? Did anybody tell you that
Yeah,
you shouldn't be a pilot
there
or you
were
couldn't
people
be a
who
pilot?
encouraged me, but they were far and few between.
Hmm.
It was a stranger, somebody from my father's hardware store in Valley Stream, that said, you're smart enough and bright enough, you can be a pilot. I said, no, I can't, because I'm terrible in math. He said, you don't have to be terrible in math and terrible in math, still become a good pilot. And you're smart enough to do that. He was the first person that ever told me I was smart enough to do whatever I wanted to do. And that was a transformative moment in my life, because that got me going. So after teaching for 7 years and being a navigator in the Air Force and being a pilot and traveling around the world, which was really my goal, that was the love of my life. And fortunately, I found a wife who happens to be your mom, had the same goal. As a matter of fact, she told me once the 3 reasons why she married me. I was good looking in a uniform. I came with airline passes, and she knew if she married me, she'd never be bored. So she won the trifecta.
Wow.
So I come into real estate, have no idea what the lingo is. And it took a little bit of time, but what I did was I kept asking people who were just ahead of me in the real estate industry. And I found out, what were they doing to be successful? How did you find buyers to work with? How did you find sellers to work with? And I was absolutely committed to them, not to me.
Right.
I was just a vehicle to have success for them.
So,
And of
but
course,
a lot of people are afraid to even ask for help. I don't know what it is, Dad. I don't know if it's embarrassment or shame, or they just want to prove to themselves that they know everything, or that I maybe I don't,
well,
but you had no qualms. Like, I've talked to agents all around Smithtown that came before you. And they confirm this. They've told me, oh, your father, he used to come by our office and ask us questions, even though he wasn't even in the same brokerage, which back then in the 1980s, when you started, would have been, today that would have been a little unusual. Back then it would have seemed unimaginable that you'd go to different brokerages and different agents and ask them how they did things. Why? Yeah, tell me about
originally
why.
that was a problem for me, because inherently I'm not an outward person. I became that person over time, but I was really very shy, inwardly kind of person. And I always felt like I needed to help people. That gave me a tremendous amount of satisfaction. So I started asking people for information, and people gave it to me. People outside my own company took a liking to me, or felt sorry for me. I don't know which, but I'll take either one. And I learned an awful lot from different people. And as I started to achieve different levels of success, I would then start picking the brains of the people who were one step above me. And then I would just keep going. And then finally, an associate of mine in the company said he's going off to Mike Ferry's seminar. And that particular year, I was the #1 in the company, the second or third largest company in the country, which was a shock to me, because I just was plodding along and doing my thing. Had no idea that I was way up there in the hierarchy of success. So I just decided, well, I don't need to go to this seminar. Then he told me it was in Florida. I have an aunt in Florida. I'm going to do that. And then I could write it off. So that just don't tell the IRS, please.
What?
So
It's for business. You obviously could have.
I go to the seminar. I'm the number one agent. Okay. And I remember saying to this gentleman, what do I need to go? I could teach this guy, right? And I go to this seminar and it blew me away. I learned so much, and I increased that following year my effectiveness and my time management, so that I kind of exploded in the number of deals and the people I was working with. It's amazing that I was able to juggle it. I look back and I say, fortunately, I had a tremendous amount of energy. I could go from wake up to night, just like the pink bunny, the ever ready bunny.
Yeah.
I never had energy. And I would have people that were a third my age towards the end of the tours say, aren't you tired? We're exhausted already.
Yeah. Wait, so just to keep so just to keep this straight. So we started with when you first got into the business, you weren't really sure how to succeed, but you sought help and got over your initial any sense of shyness or anything like that. You were able to overcome that, and then you found success. So then you started talking about coming across Mike Ferry, and you thought at that moment that, okay, I'm probably, I've been successful. I could probably teach them a thing or two. And then but it sounds like you were about to tell us how you were open enough. Am I reading this correctly? You were open enough that when you went there, you were kind of blown away by what you heard and you started to learn more.
Yes. And I will tell you that seminar, Mike was not the most pleasant speaker I'd ever met. He was kind of obnoxious, to be polite. But his message was so powerful to me. And I immediately joined the Mike Ferry organization in terms of taking on as much education, as much learning from some of the top agents in the country. What were they doing to be successful? So I wanted to copy them. I wanted to implement their methodologies. And I realized that there were two things about dealing in sales, is that it's a process of numbers, how many people you speak to, and how you speak to people, and how you communicate, how you can be effective to help them. And I always ask for permission. Hardly ever told anybody anything. I would share information with people, and you'd get a different response. And once they opened up to you, I found that they adopted me and they trusted my judgment, and they would ask me things that I was surprised, because I never felt that I had that kind of relationship with people. I was too shy in the beginning. So at any rate, I was very determined. I was going to be successful or not. And one thing that I did, I made a pledge to myself that when I come into the business, I had heard that a lot of people drop out. Most people drop out. And like 18 months, 80% of people drop out. And I made a commitment. I'm not going to quit, come hell or high water, pardon my French, for at least 365 days. And had I not made that pledge and kept to it, I would have been long gone out of the business, because it wasn't easy. It was a challenge. And I had no background for this stuff.
I was actually going to ask you about that. Like in the beginning, you see, from the position we're in, we see people coming in, right? We see people guiding, and we can relate to what they're going through. We were there once too. I was there. I mean, people think that just because you were doing it before me, that, I came and joined you and was handed the keys to the kingdom. It wasn't like that at all. Like, I'm grateful to have the opportunity that you set the foundation. But for myself, I went through, the trials and tribulations of learning and growing and how to talk to people and how to guide them properly. It's not easy. How did you overcome it? I'm sure you had moments where you just wanted to quit. I'm sure you had moments last week where you wanted to quit, right? So how do you get through that? How do you keep going?
Well, I've had those ups and downs all throughout my career. And then sometimes I would just have to go off into a corner, so to speak, a mental corner, and clear out the cobwebs,
Hmm.
and then wake up the next day and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and okay, I'm just gonna plot again. I think just my nature of hating to give up on a
Yeah.
goal, or trying to succeed for people. And I don't know, for some reason or other, helping people gave me a tremendous amount of self-satisfaction. I guess you could say it made me feel worthwhile, tremendous sense of worthwhileness. And of course, this was something I was doing and I was getting paid for it. So I was doing something nice for most people, and most people appreciate it. I used to say to myself in the beginning, I want 365 great clients that'll like me so much, they'll put me up for one night. So
Hmm.
I would never be without a place to sleep or without a meal to get every day for 365 days. So all joking aside, I've gotten a lot of people that I still talk to. And I
Yeah.
just did that just now. Somebody at some house to be 15 years ago. And I got a warm welcome when I was on the phone, and I like that. It just is very self-satisfying. But
Yeah.
it
I
wasn't
mean,
easy.
yeah, I
It
agree.
wasn't easy. This has been just doing anything, I think, because I've got 5 career licenses, and each one of them was a challenge. I guess becoming a commercial flight navigator was the toughest one that I ever went through. But I was just determined that this is what I want, this is my goal, and come hell or high water, I'm going to succeed or die trying almost, So I would say that that's probably that genetic makeup that made me be successful in spite of myself,
Mm.
because sometimes I would put my foot in my mouth. Fortunately, I got out of that trend, because that was always a disaster. But life is a learning process from the beginning to, I guess, the end. I'm always learning.
That's what I
So
think.
everybody
Well,
comes to me, and I'm always learning from them as well. So
that's one of the things that we try to hand down to the people on our team, right? Which is the concept of lifelong learning. We're always learning. The markets are always changing, and even if it goes from buyer, a buyer market to a seller market, each time it's still different, right? Bell bottoms, like we talk about this, like with
yeah, I
style, right?
just saw them in
Bell,
the window
yeah, yeah,
yesterday.
right.
Bell
So
bottom.
they may come back in and out, like fashion comes in and out, but each time it's with a slightly different concept. It's a different generation. They see it differently. So it's you have to learn, because the next time something happens, if you're not open to learning, then you're gonna get passed by. And I think that's, to me, come like being raised by you, being raised by this industry, the fact that you started in 1985 and we're still going strong, if not stronger. I mean, that says something about our willingness, and our more than willingness, Dad, like our constant desire to grow and get better. That, I think, that's part of the DNA of the team, and I think that comes from you.
Well, I agree 100%. You have to have an open mind. You have to listen to people, learn from them, see this perspective versus that perspective, and not be super critical. Have your standards and values, which mine are pretty high, as you well know, because you've
Mhm.
had to live up to them from
Yeah.
time to time. And I still believe that that's a key to success. So you have to have the motivation. Like my grandmother used to say, you have to have enough of this, an awful lot of heart, and know how to get off your behind and get into action. And in order to use your mind, you absolutely have to open it up. And you have to listen to people, even if they're wrong. It's something to learn from that.
Hmm.
So you
That's
have to
really
be
interesting.
open to that.
You don't hear that very much. You have to be open to what people have to say, even if the advice is wrong, or even if you know inherently they're wrong, there's still a lesson to be learned in that perspective. That I think is
Exactly.
really remarkable.
And if you make a commitment to people, I find that they respond. I just got another referral yesterday from
Mhm.
somebody that I had sold a house to, and they're somehow related. Um, and so I just don't even have to go knocking on doors anymore. People are coming to me, but it wasn't an overnight phenomenon. It was a struggle to get to where I'm at. It's much easier.
I've been dying to ask because it seems like you're at a point where the business just seems to fall from the sky, right?
It
And
does.
it does for you,
But
but
I built the foundation for it years ago because of my attitude in this business from day one was this was going to be a long haul. That was
Mhm.
my target mentally. This is going to be a long haul. I didn't want to do anything to antagonize people unnecessarily, to do the wrong thing, or to cut corners, because I felt, the table is round and what goes around comes around. I really truly believe that. So I always felt that I had to put my clients first, whether they were a buyer or a seller.
Mhm.
And if it worked out for them, and I'm CYA them, which is cover your behind, if I'm doing
Sure.
that for them, I'm doing it for me. If I'm doing it for me, I'm doing it for them. So I always felt that sometimes people don't ask the questions like you had mentioned before because they're a little shy. So I kind of anticipate and I kind of like bring it in, just the way I was as a teacher. And the word was out that I was a pretty nice teacher. Kids wanted to be in my class.
Mhm.
Um, so I I I just try to get people involved in the process so that they feel like I'm not dictating to them. Uh,
I think the way we look at it today, what you're trying to say is that like today's consumers looking for transparency. So you
oh,
were early on, you were trying to bring transparency to the process, which would make them feel more confident and would make them trust you more because you were going the extra mile, anticipating what their needs and wants were going to be, maybe even what their fears or concerns were, and addressing them. Right?
yes, even if they didn't ask, I would just kind of in the conversation with people, I would try to anticipate what they would ask or maybe want to ask and not ask,
Hmm.
and cover stuff that I felt that they needed this information. But like I said, I would always pretty much ask for permission. Like, can I share this with you? Can I share
Yes.
experience with you? So
I
I learned a long time ago, and I tell this to your agents that are you're training right now, that if you really want to know if you've reached a pinnacle of success about what you're doing, you need to know what you're saying, why you're saying, and then give an example. Because if you tell a little anecdotal story about the point that you're trying to make, that's what will stay with people. That they'll relate to,
mhm.
not to an abject conversation here, an abject statement there. And so I used to sit down and write words that I thought would be more communicable, more effective, more helpful. And I did my advertising that way as well. So
Mhm. Yeah.
uh, the whole idea was I can't help people who don't come to me for help. And I want to help them. And I'm always honest with them. I tell them sometimes things that they may not notice, but should have noticed. Well, they don't know enough about it to maybe even think about some of the things. So if I have credibility with these people and they trust me, I
Mhm.
can help them better than if
Right.
they doubt me and are aloof from me. So
So let me ask you this though, because we were talking a little bit before about how people, it seems to come from the sky for you now, but it doesn't. It, that's not really true though entirely, is it? I mean, you just sit by your phone and it rings because I see you constantly texting, calling people, touching base, right? Like
yeah, I know that there's
if you set your phone down for 2 years, I don't think people would continue calling you. I like, right? Like you do take action, don't you?
Yeah, I made a couple of calls today and
Yeah.
yesterday to people I haven't spoken to in a long time. How are things going in COVID? I'm curious, how are things moving along for them? Uh, what have you done with the house? When am I being invited to dinner? Because
Yeah.
I've always told everybody whenever they sign a binder or they sign a listing, I said after I go out the house, this invisible ink is going to pop up and it's going to say, "Oh, P.S. You have to feed the help, and Richard Lenard is the help." So I also try to bring in some humor because that kind of settles down the tension within them.
Mm,
Um, and I think that this should be as comfortable and as pleasant an experience. And every time I'm able to succeed at that, I get an awful lot of satisfaction from it. And that's energy for me to keep going because I'm not a youngster, even though I know mentally I'm still maybe 29. I'll give you 39, but the guy looking in the mirror back at me is some old guy. I can't figure out who it is. So I got a broken mirror, but I want to help that person.
hmm
It's just in my DNA, as you put it.
mm,
And I
yeah.
haven't, and I've never given that up. I have given up certain things that I gypped you out of and your sister in committing to people in the sphere of real estate and not giving you enough time. And I feel guilty about that. And it bothers me. But I kind of feel I offset it by dragging you all over the world, you and your sister, and having experiences that most people never have, or maybe
hmm
once in a lifetime.
hmm
And so I felt that if I wanted A, I had to do B to get to C,
I mean,
and then
look,
back to A.
at the end of the day, we can both agree, and anybody that does real estate at a very high level, is that it doesn't necessarily get easier because, well, Dad, I've come to the conclusion recently that, I mean, some people are trying to search for peace or calm or bliss or whatever, however they define happiness. But for me, if there's no challenge, there is no happiness. If I reach a certain plateau, I want to know what the next climb is.
Exactly, you have
I'd be
to.
bored otherwise. So it's not like real estate gets any easier.
Right.
There's always the next challenge, but along the way, it becomes more fulfilling, right? Like, so you did take us. Thank you, by the way, for taking us around the world and on our travels. Real estate did that. Real estate provided that for us and the family, learning to ski in the Alps, right? Like things like that. Real estate did that. And that is there for the people that are ready to work hard for it and not give up their dreams. That's, I think, at the end of the day, like the theme of what has come from this discussion. That's what I think I hear you saying. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yeah. I the point that you're making is really the crux of the matter, is that you have to take. There's an old Chinese proverb that the longest journey begins with the first step.
hmm
So I'm going to give you an example. A long time ago, I read in, I guess, U.S. News and World Report or something, or a magazine. They did a survey of the top 500 CEOs in this country. And 54 people responded out of the 500. And out of them, they averaged to this question: how many failures did you experience in life to get to the becoming this ultimate success story, CEO of General Motors or something
Right.
like that?
Some large company. Yeah.
And the reason I remember this number, because the number of people who responded was the same number as the average total failures that they had experienced along the way. The
Hmm.
problem with the average person is that they take 2 or 3 of those hits and they're done. They're cooked for the rest of their lives. These people never took a failure as the end of the road. It was just a learning process. And I think if people could internalize that information and apply it to themselves, they wouldn't give up so easily. and they wouldn't be running scared all the time. Do you think that everything I tried was
I mean,
an assumed
I don't.
success story?
I've honestly though, I've been in this business long enough that like people come in with good faith, people try hard, um, and yeah, maybe we might call it failure because they left the industry, but it's not like they're running for the hills. It's that most of the time, it's two things. One, they weren't able to find the right people to surround themselves with to find that success, and two, they didn't know the right questions to ask.
So I have always tried to anticipate that. But the thing is, this is a good point you're making. Mentorship is very, very important, but a lot of people don't have the time or the inclination to take somebody under their wing.
Hmm.
I've always felt that that was a really important factor in being successful by helping other people, because like I said, the table is round and you need to treat people nicely going up the ladder of success, because you never know if you might accidentally happen to be meeting
Yeah,
them coming down.
yeah,
So it's in the long term, the long range of things, you want people to have a good feeling about you. If I need to reach out to them, I want them to help me. I want to be there to help them when they reach out. Or maybe I just even have to take the bull by the horn and offer it, even though they don't ask it.
hmm,
And to be available, to be accessible, to be a sounding board. All of this is very, very important. And
yeah,
look, we're bringing on a lot of new people onto the team,
hmm,
and I know what they need. You know, I was a school teacher. I know how to communicate with kids,
yeah.
young people. And some of these are really kids compared to me, but they may not feel that way. But
Oh, but
I mean, they're very, very young. And the nice thing about it is I see there's an eagerness that is kind of reflective of the way I was when I was a little older than them, but starting out at the same level, starting from scratch. So that's pretty much it, I would think.
yeah. Well, I want to thank you for taking some time out of your day again to speak with me about this. I hope to do it again soon. I really had fun talking to you about it and actually getting it recorded so that we can share it with the world. Because one thing I know about you, you kind of touched upon it in the beginning about, you know, your background as a school teacher. You sought help from others, so I always saw you wanting to turn around and reciprocate and help the people that were coming up behind you, and that I've always respected, and that has become another part of the importance of the DNA of our team. So I can't wait to share this, and I'm really happy that you did share it with us, and I want to thank you for being my father, for starting this team, for helping me achieve so much in my life. And I hope to talk to you again soon and do some more of these videos. You okay with that?
I'm game for it. Yes, I'm
All
up
right.
for it.
Awesome. Thanks, Dad. I love you.
You're very welcome. I feel the same way about you too.
Oh, good. Yay.
And your sister, don't forget
Yay.
her,
Oh,
Danielle.
yeah,
And your
yeah.
mom.
Oh, yes.
I did a good job there too for you, didn't I? Picked a really, really wonderful young lady
Yeah. Thank you.
for you guys.
Appreciate you all. All right. Thank you. Bye.